Oi, bruv. Bring it in. Now picture you're an energetic, spriteful young lad at the age of 12. You fire up your Sega Dreamcast and your first reaction is, Mom, come here. You gotta check this out. It's real life. You can't even distinguish this from the real world. The cutscenes look so lifelike. Yep.
My son is a nerd.
Well, that was my first reaction to Grandia 2, which is the second of 4 Grandia games in the series. And I know. Yeah, what you're doing the games out of order. You're not doing one before I know.
Deal with it, okay?
Grandia 2 is a JRPG developed by Game Arts that released in 2000 in Japan and a year later in 2001 for those of us in North America, thanks to Ubisoft. Since its initial release in 2000, Grandia 2 has been released multiple times for numerous systems such as the PlayStation 2, Switch, and also Windows. Can you imagine playing Grandia 2 on a window? Not me. Also, we will be discussing spoilers in this game. It did come out over 22 years ago, but hey, do you? So the gameplay, and what I think is the highlight of this game, and one that changed my perspective on RPGs going forward, is the combat. While this game is effectively a turn-based RPG, there are a few mechanics and also visuals that make the combat extremely satisfying. So rather than your typical ATB bar or traditional turn-based system, the Grandia series introduces the IP gauge, also known as the initiative bar. IP standing for initiative point. During combat, each character's turn will be shown in the bottom right corner of the bar along with the enemies and will slowly fill up based on your character's agility stats. The depth of this battle system comes into play when you begin to use different types of attacks to delay the enemy's turn, so you can use your classic combo for more damage, or you can use the critical attack, which will do less damage, but if timed correctly, will cancel the enemy's turn. Classic combo? Like, give me a classic combo with the side of crit. Hold the experience points.
My son is a nerd.
Along with the IP gauge, you also need to account for the distance your character will need to travel to physically attack the enemy. If an enemy is too far, then your character will exhaust and will waste their turn. This is affected by your movement stat and can also be circumvented with certain items that allow your character to warp or just boost your movement stat incredibly high. This makes each character feel fundamentally different and adds a layer of depth to the classic turn-based system. Not to mention it just looks more visually satisfying. And lastly, but not leastly, is the mini cutscenes you get when you cast certain magic spells. I love when games, especially RPGs, can make you feel powerful, and Grandia 2 does that extremely well at times. This game doesn't have summons, like some other RPG franchise that I will not name here, but it does have incredibly cool cutscenes and powerful magic spells that make the battles seem incredibly epic. This story features heavy religious themes and a different take on the 7 deadly sins. We start off as Ryudo, who is a geohound, or basically a mercenary for hire. We are tasked with seeing the safety of Elena, who is to play an important role for the church by participating in a ceremony that will seal away the evil demon Valmar. In typical JRPG fashion, the ceremony goes horribly wrong. Everyone is left dead except for Elena, who has been possessed by the wings of Valmar. This is when we meet our 2.5 party member, Millennia. 2.5 because Millennia and Elena are effectively the same person and they swap back and forth throughout the story. Millennia's entire role throughout this story is to basically devour all of the other parts of Valmar so that he can become one being again. This is when the story is explained and we learn that we must find the legendary Grandia saber that was used 1,000 years prior in the war of Light versus Dark to defeat Valmar. Lord Valmar and Lord Grandia basically came to a stalemate 1,000 years ago, and only now has darkness begun to rise again. We meet our next party member, Rowan, in a town that has been overrun by monsters, and he's lost his precious medal that was given to him by his late mother. Oh, is little baby Rowan gonna cry because his dead mommy gave him a medal and now he's lost it? Boo-hoo. Damn. That is actually pretty sad though. Elena convinces us to help him out after realizing he's run off on his own. Before we set off, she turns into Millennia, and the two of us go rescue the young crybaby from the cave. Rowan immediately takes to Millennia, and we see that she's not as evil as we first thought. So Rowan joins us, and I can't fully understand why he joins our party. I don't know. Regardless, we are soon attacked by our fourth party member named Merrig, who mistook Ryudo for his brother Melphis. Obviously, Melphis is the evil brother because of the name Melphis.
Melphis?
Melphis. Once defeated, Merrig joins us and decides to help Ryudo hunt down his evil brother who has been possessed by the horns of Valmar. We venture forward and defeat other pieces of Valmar such as the claws, the eye, the heart, etc. in some pretty epic battles, and each time Millennia devours them and gains new powers. After defeating bosses, you also gain mana eggs and skill books, which allow you to level up spells and skills and equip them to different party members. This is a super cool and addictive feature, just trying to max out the mana eggs and skill books. I mean, I spent 2 extra hours at the end of the game just grinding, trying to max out all the character skills and all the mana eggs and all the skill books.
My son is a nerd.
After a bit further into the journey, we finally meet our 5th party member, who is also my favorite. Her name happens to be Tio and is a replicant that develops character growth into trying to become a human. Oddly uncanny resemblance to another replicant with a similar name who borrows a ton of these same ideas. Yoko Taro? I'm watching you, buddy. Matter of fact, there's another character in the game that sounds oddly familiar to another Nier character. Or is it just me?
Sorry, it must have hurt. It must have really hurt.
I remember now. I remember everything.
Yoko Taro? Shoot, that's straight plagiarism, dog. Anyways, Tio is dope. Even as a kid, I remember giving her all of my stat up items and even the best equipment just so she would be by far my strongest character. She has a naturally high movement stat, so she kind of zooms around the battlefield, but watching her basic combo attacks do massive damage was so oddly satisfying. Each character has to venture back to their home village at some point, and that's where we get their individual stories as well as most of them being resolved. Ryudo does end up finding and defeating Melphis, where he inherits Valmar's horns incidentally, and both Millennia and Elena team up to help save him. As we start uncovering more of the story, we start to discover that maybe the church wasn't so holy all along. Wait, so let me get this straight. You're telling me that the church was acting selfishly and was being controlled by one guy at the top who actually didn't have the world's best interests at heart? Was just manipulating the entire religion to do his bidding? Oh my gosh, this game is so unrealistic, right? Lord Zera, who is being possessed by Valmar, put this whole plan into place to have Elena bring him all of the separated parts of Valmar so he could awaken them all together. Lord Zera? Like Lord Zero? Zero swag, I bet. After a ton of really cool cutscenes and traveling to the moon, we come face to face with Valmar himself, have to fight off becoming possessed, and then beat the absolute heck out of Valmar. Also, the part where you're possessed, I tried to click on a different option for science just to see if the game would let you, but it actually just loops until you pick the correct dialogue choice, so I'm usually a huge fan of the soundtracks in these video games. This one's a really tough one for me to judge, however. Similar to some of the previous games I reviewed in Evolution and Time Stalkers, the soundtrack isn't anything that I would listen to separately, but it does go extremely well with the vibe of the game. It's pretty non-distinct when you're in towns or traveling through areas, but I really did enjoy the battle themes and more intense moments that had more of a rock and roll themed soundtrack. So probably the weakest part of the game, but only because the other parts of the game were extremely strong. So all in all, I put in about just over 20 hours into this game. Mainly because I grinded at the very end for a few extra hours just to max out all the skill books and everything. I know, ladies, calm down. It was only a couple extra hours, but hey, I mean, who's counting anyways? I thoroughly enjoyed going back and replaying this game. It just reminded me how good turn-based RPG combat can actually be. I highly recommend this game to any of my RPG fans out there, and overall would have to give this game 9 cute little tiny robotic Tio watermelons out of 10.
My son is a nerd.
Thank you guys for watching. If you want to see a similar game I reviewed, just click this thing over here. Otherwise, take care of yourselves. Peace. See you in the next one.